Welcome to the latest episode of High Output AI, where Tom and Elliot talk AI and the tools and technologies that make AI happen.
Hello. Welcome back to episode 22. 22, right?
22, starring Pop.
Now with 100% more audio than the first record.
Yes, we did do this one last Friday, and I cooked up some settings in OBS, which is what we're using to record, and that resulted in an hour and so of just animated silent film, and I don't yet have an AI to bring the audio back, so
So we just shot the shit for an hour and didn't record it, which was our lives before we started this podcast. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Cheers, mate.
We crack this one. So what do we got? I got sugar-free Red Bull, and you have
mystery Fanta.
Yeah, mystery flavor Fanta. So leave a comment in below the video on what flavor you think Tom's Fanta is, because I have no idea.
Tastes like questioning.
I've tasted it.
Deep pondering questions. Speaking of deep pondering questions, what are we talking about today, mate?
There's big money flowing around. AI is the new hotness once again.
Yeah.
Crypto is out. AI is back in.
VC is not dead this week.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that. So stability.
So there's three big pieces of news in the funding markets in the last week. So the big one was Stability AI raised about $100 million from a couple of different places, Lightspeed Ventures and Couture. I looked up how to pronounce that this time around. At $1 billion valuation, which is huge. Great terms for them. The second bit of news is Jasper AI, which is kind of like an automated marketing and advertising company, has raised $125 million at a $1.5 billion valuation. And OpenAI is in chats with Microsoft to raise more money, and they were recently valued at $20 billion when they did their previous round earlier this year. So, holy hell, money. Big vowels, big numbers.
Yeah. I mean, lots of unicorns in the AI space. And I mean, it seems to be that all of these three companies, Stability certainly with Stable Diffusion, OpenAI with DALL-E, and it's got other models, but DALL-E's I think the biggest headline recently. And then Jasper with its content or its marketing drivel generation. That's me. I've written a lot of ads in my time, so I can't call it marketing drivel. But it's marketing content automation. Yep. Generative AI seems to be the trend of the month, the quarter. And I guess these are a couple of months old. So it's an interesting one. Yeah,
so it's great. First off, we'll start with that. It's just great to see so much money flowing into putting life to these projects, and we'll get into it when we talk about this, but also funding other areas and other developments as well. So today what I think we're going to talk about is where's the money going, what's it going to be used for. We'll talk about each of the rounds a little bit in detail. We're also going to kind of explore the topic of is venture capital the right model for these places? Yeah. Because a lot of these, both Open and Stability, claim openness and sharing, which is a little bit counterintuitive to the venture capital investment model. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll also just really like to see where we think they're going to be spending this money further as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. And no updates on Google Stadia this week.
Zero Stadia updates.
I did see a couple of new cloud gaming devices come out, but they're not Stadia related.
No.
That is not actually a theme of this show.
Yeah, we need to not mention Stadia this week, otherwise we're going to suddenly be the Stadia streaming podcast.
Yes.
And we can't go through a third name change.
I'll put Stadia. Good stuff.
Before we kick off though, mate, we better welcome all the new subscribers this week.
Yes, hello.
Thank you very much. All the new downloaders across all the different platforms. So if you're not yet, if you're listening to this without any of those subscribed or follow buttons clicked, press those. Leave us a comment, leave us questions, hit us up on Twitter. We've made it a rule to respond to everything, and we have, including the ones that says, Elliot looks like Andrew Street.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I think that was my read of the situation.
Yeah.
Look, thanks if that's what you think.
Yeah, he's the famous, very good-looking actor from Sherlock and Fleabag.
Yeah. I wasn't sure who he was. Once I looked him up, I knew who he was. But I don't know.
And I can confirm that Elliot is real. He's not a deep fake of Andrew Street.
I don't know if this would... if deep fakes were that sensitive, they're not very good. But yeah. Anyway,
Let's
Man,
jump into it.
Before we dive into the details, I think the craziest thing about these is they're both seed rounds. But
Yep.
Stability
Yeah.
and Jasper are $100 million seed rounds.
Exactly.
What the flip? I don't know. If
We can swear on the show. It's our show. We can do whatever we want.
Said we weren't swearing or not, but hot damn! Like, what massive rounds
Yep.
in a time when like everybody's saying, Facebook's cutting staff.
Yep.
Google's cutting staff. Everyone's cutting staff, cutting costs.
See what
everywhere
Elon
else.
said about Twitter? We're going to take 70. We reckon we
Yeah.
could take 75% out of the workforce. Yeah, everyone's cutting, but
And then power his $200 million seed rounds. Now, there's always going to be money in VC. It's got to be deployed somewhere.
Yeah,
And
there's-
I think the horizon, given it's a seed round, is long enough that they're probably saying, well, this will weather the current market conditions. But hot damn.
yeah. So let's jump into Stability and talk about that a little bit because it was probably the bigger news, and they had a bit of a demo day as well from their CEO Ahmad, and he gave a nice overview of the company. And there's been a few comments saying they're pre-revenue, they don't have a product, what is this? It's just an open source community. That's not true. They have a number of different areas that they're working with. And don't get me wrong, there's a little bit of still a little bit unsure what the plan is for the business, but hey, that's not my job to understand what they don't need to tell me what the business plan is.
Especially at a seed round.
Yeah. But so they've got a number of different areas that they operate in. They operate in the most famous we've already mentioned, which is Stable Diffusion, and
I don't know what is going on with this. It's just rotating continuously.
It's precession from the globe. It's,
Look, if you're not watching this on video, my microphone stand continues to just spin that way, and it's really getting on my nerves.
Yeah. So their most famous development, what really put them on the map was Stable Diffusion, which they co-developed with a group out of Munich and Runway the stop laughing at me, you make me laugh. Runway the company. And so and on top of that, they've built something called Dream Studio, which is essentially their first product, and they have it's basically a place to be able to create video and imagery content very quickly in the spirit of rapid development of either marketing or animation or general video content.
So would you say, at a high level, that Dream Studio is an AI competitor for the likes of, say, Canva or Adobe's more lightweight online paint tools?
Yeah, I would say it seems that it's going that way, but it overall, to me, you're never going to be able to compete with Adobe in creating creator tools. So really, what I see it as is like a kind of a rapid content generation place that would actually probably be more likely to be competing with the Getty Images and the Shutterstocks of the world, or individual animator and designer time.
Yeah, it's an interesting one in that regard, if we sidetrack for a second, because if you look at Canva, if you look at, I can't remember what Adobe's Canva-esque tool is called, but anyway, whatever it is, like a lot of those have inbuilt sort of stock photo searches and all this sort of stuff. It's an interesting overlap of like who wants lightweight content generation as a dedicated tool. Like I can see this as a SaaS that feeds into these other tools, but it'll be interesting to see how this develops, whether Dream Studio gets more fine-grained content editing tools, or whether someone, say like Canva, hooks into Dream Studio to pull, unlimited supply of material.
And look, we don't know, so we're speculating. But my feel as a company is that your secret sauce is finding these AI communities, providing seed research and seed investment both through compute and money to them, and wrapping products around that, and then pushing that on to the likes of the Adobes of the world, rather than creating a whole new suite of tools for creators. Yeah,
look, I would say that's definitely true. And I mean, this comes into the question of what's their business model and where's all this money going to be spent. And I think if you look at beyond Stable Diffusion, there's some work in the health space, there's some work in...
they've got about 9 different functions, everywhere from music development all the way through to protein folding in the biological, like the microbiology space. Yeah, and you'd think that, they are going to want to probably return some money to investors at some point, reasonable thing to do. Yeah. I would agree that I think their best bet is to
the optimal version, I think, of Stable Diffusion going forward, at least in my eyes, as somebody who works in AI, uses AI, would love to have access to these tools, is that for weird nerds like me, the tools are there and they're available, and I can screw around with them and do some live streams and just play, have fun, work out how they work. But for an enterprise client, somebody who doesn't want to be hosting these models or wants the latest and greatest or wants to, at the end of the day, outsource the support, outsource the hosting, outsource the updates, having that as a API or a set of tools that you can integrate into your product is really, really useful, because for most people, I would say, the things that Stability uses is going to be a part of a larger product. I've seen some examples where people are doing like Stable Diffusion interior design type things and charging for that. Yeah, that's fine. That's a very direct use of it. But I think in that Canva example or whatever else, it's a part of a larger product suite. Yep. And depending on the size or the focus of your business, you might not want to be running these in-house.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can see a business model moving forward for Stability where they have the generative plugin for the visual space on the imagery front. They've got the plugin for the video space. They've got the plugin for the audio space. They've got the plugin for the other spaces in the creator world, the writing space, for example, like creating those plugins that are then contracted to the Canvas, the Adobes, the even Grammarly's of the world, I would say, and is probably where I would see this business going.
Definitely. And I think that's where we've seen GTP3 go. I don't know if you saw the tweet thread from Ali Abdal.
Yeah, I did.
So he put out, he's a sort of content creator, mainly on YouTube. He's a doctor and a bunch of other things.
Just seems like a really nice human being as well.
Yeah, top bloke.
Don't know him, but top bloke.
Yeah, seems like a top bloke. He put out a tweet thread where he typed, I think, the first 1.5 tweets and then made the rest of them through AI, which was like how I remain productive or something else. Got massive engagement on those. I've seen a couple of others. One called Moon something, I can't remember. It's got a green theme. I'll put it in the show notes anyway. And it's sort of like a combination outlining writing assistance tool. And it's basically like write, and then once you get writer's block, just like, mash this button and it'll help you out. Which seems really cool. Yeah. And I think there'll be some pretty similar stuff in the...
we've been joking about this a lot, but we will do a fully AI scripted podcast one episode. Maybe a segment to begin with.
We're going to do a mini episode at some point where we'll take all the videos that we've done so far, which I think is probably 50 odd videos in total. We might have to do a couple more because some of those are shorts. Do audio to text and then put that through some fine-tuned text generation and generate us a little segment about what to talk about. And we'll see how it does. And we'll stream the process so that you can understand how all that stuff works, because I think it should at the very least be a bit of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So let's jump back on track with a little bit about Stability. So they kind of jumped on the scene or call it June this year with Stable Diffusion, but they've been running in the background, but from the money from their CEO, who's kind of was the angel investor from it, a guy called Ahmad, and he has been running he kind of was a hedge fund manager and then mathematics background, got very excited about the space and wanted to create a world of openness and like giving basically people the resources to do research in this space. And the resources were generally money and compute. And now what's happened is that they've now raised $100 million. And before raising the money, they had about 4,000 GPUs working with AWS to do it and to host everything. And they were donating compute to research organizations such as the group out of Munich to create models such as Stable Diffusion. And now they got $100 million, and the plan seems to be to expand the compute and also to directly sponsor PhD students, which is interesting. Now, I'm not sure what what money they'll be spending on creating products like the Dream Studio that they already have as well. It's a bit hard to get that information, especially because they're at the seed stage. But there's a lot of money flowing into the space now, especially if you consider it over a 2-year horizon, which is the general kind of like startup runway from a seed round. So, yeah, how do you feel about 100 PhD students being sponsored by a private company running around?
I mean, look, I think it's overall a good thing. There's a lot of corporate PhD students out there, so this is a well-trodden path, which is great. You know, they're not... I think the risk a lot in any time that a highly funded startup or otherwise tries to, you know, disrupt the research world is like there's pretty ingrained processes and reasons for those processes that...
peer review is a thing.
Yeah, and it's a thing for a reason. Like, yes, it can be slow and it's got its own flaws, but, you know, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. But I think... You know, industry-sponsored PhDs are a pretty well-trodden path. I mean, we've sponsored PhD students before. Hello, if you're watching.
And if you're not watching, please be watching.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to come on the show and talk about your research, that's more than welcome.
That's a great idea.
So I think that's great. I think, you know, something we talked about offline about this is that I think any PhD student coming into Stability. You know, PhDs, depending on where you are and the size of the project and everything else, you know, 4 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes longer, but let's assume 4 to 7 years, wherever you are in the world. You've got to make sure that what you're working on is not just a 12-month fad.
Yeah, it needs to be there in 4 years' time.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you think about, let's think about the best image generation stuff from like 4 years ago, like maybe GANs. And if you picked your topic too narrowly, you might be stuck doing research on things that have like the world has moved on. So I think, you know, number one is to be cognizant of that. It'll be interesting to see who's supervising a lot of these PhD positions.
Yep.
Because it's great to have industry people on the team, but you want academic people on the team as well. Especially if these PhDs are looking for a more academic career. They want good names under their belt. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm sure there's going to be great research coming out of this. If you look at DeepMind and OpenAI and some of the other groups, you know, even Tesla that we talked about in the last show, like they put out a lot of research and it's quite interesting research. So I look forward to seeing that. In terms of the compute spend, though, you know, using AWS is a smart idea. They don't own the GPUs. It's like I think this overall play is like it's very hedge fund-esque. It's like we're not going to build the AI. We're going to build the resources and contract a whole bunch of other people because some of those will be good AI, some of those won't, and we'll just provide some sort of foundational capital.
Yep.
In this case, access to GPUs that they can all use, and we'll just sort of ride the index. It'll be interesting to see.
I don't know how hedge funds work, so I'm not going to correct you or incorrect you.
Yeah. I mean, only at the broadest sense do I know how hedge funds
I thought they just
work.
invested in hedges.
Oh, yeah. What's it? Topiary?
Topiary.
Yeah, topiary funds. I wonder if there's a fund called Topiary.
We should buy that URL.
Yeah. Don't let this go live until Topiary.
Billy Bob, don't put it live.
Is in our possession. No. Yeah, but it'll be interesting, you know, those 4,000 GPUs, they're probably going to want to expand that, but like, eventually those 4,000 GPUs are going to be out of date.
Yeah.
AWS, you know, we've used AWS and Google Cloud, and this is not a criticism of them, it's a reality of the world, is that like GPU capacity is tough. If they're truly reserving these GPUs or even owning them, that's going to be expensive. And if
$50 million a year was someone's outside estimate of what they were already spending on these GPUs.
Yeah, that's wild. And I mean, if they are really owning them, in as much as like they're fully reserved instances, they're going to want to upgrade them, keep to the latest and greatest. I mean, you saw the Tesla stuff. Like,
yeah, but my question was like, someone was saying the 4,000 GPUs, $50 million a year. I know you can buy the 380 Ti's for less than $1,000 at the moment.
Yeah.
The maths didn't really check out for me, like, on that. Is there, like, obviously is there, like, a large cost, like, getting the 4,000 GPUs to work in tandem?
Well, there is some of that, but it's like, for every, I don't know, maybe you can slap 4 GPUs on a device, maybe more depending on your setup, but for every one of those you need CPUs, you need RAM, you need storage, you need network, you need a data center to host them all, cooling. So, I mean, there's going to be a hefty bit of CapEx there, but the OpEx is non-trivial as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I digress. I was just like,
No.
50 million, like it was like an order of magnitude off in my head, like, anyway, for 4,000 GPUs.
Yeah. I'm sure that OpEx has been a big part of it. And also, like, I mean, if they are outsourcing this to AWS,
they've got to take you.
They're paying a premium on running it themselves, and for good reason.
And who knows? This could also include the AWS funny money that they give startups left, right, and center. So.
Yeah, exactly. And also,
sorry, I didn't mean to call it funny money. It's great. Keep doing what you're doing, AWS.
Credits are good.
Yeah.
They are very helpful. And a good marketing strategy. But anyway, look, it'll be interesting to see where they go with this. If you are, keeping up with the Stability AI drama, there was some stuff at the end of last week.
Yeah.
We'll put it down to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, put it down to maybe a misunderstanding or a miscommunication, but the team that originally wrote the paper released version 1.5, which had been long hyped by the Stability team.
Yep. Sorry, we'll just clarify that Stable Diffusion is an open source project that Stability AI helped create.
Yeah. There was a partnership
Stable Diffusion
between Stability, Runway, and do you remember the name of the?
It was somewhere in Munich. It was a German
I feel like
university.
It has the name Lion
LMU is an acronym coming.
Anyway, it's a collaborative effort. But the team from Runway released this version 1.5 on Hugging Face. So new weights, new updates to the model, mainly around quality and some filters around generating sort of undesirable images. Yep. Like things like pictures of children doing things that you don't want children to be doing. But they were holding that back. There was a long post about why they held that back. They answer to a larger power now that they have investors and public sentiment, and they've just sort of crossed that threshold of cowboy.
Yep.
And now they're, I don't know what's after cowboy, but their risk tolerance has gone down.
Yep.
Runway released version 1.5. They launched a takedown notice on Hugging Face. Got a lot of press. They retracted the takedown notice. It sounds like a bunch of people are probably not talking to each other as much as they should. Probably some groups are a little frustrated by this brand new external party that now supposedly controls what they can and can't do. And it'll be interesting to see where all that lands.
Yeah, and this is a good point to pivot towards. So before this, Stability AI had a big push about openness and community and developers and all the fun-loving, let's build projects together and release it to the world and get the brightest minds on it no matter where they are. But now they've taken $100 million of capitalists' money. How do you think this is going to change the space? And have we already started to see it change with just this incident alone in the last week?
Yeah, so I think that's where everybody is holding their breath. Is this signs of a new MO from Stability?
Yep.
The new way that they operate is, going the way of allegedly OpenAI, which has closed itself off. And look, don't get me wrong. I think that there are instances where releasing an AI to the public for unmitigated use, do whatever the fuck you want, is dangerous. Like, we wouldn't release, chemical weapons to the public and say, like, look, please just use them for good.
Research them at home. See what happens.
Exactly. Like, I don't know. I think that the problem here is that the regulations and the public sentiment and public understanding of this space is lagging behind the technology.
Yeah.
And until we catch up, we kind of do need to take things a little slower. But on the flip side, if they're using this as a way to hold things back under the guise of safety, the same way that for a long time governments have said we need to be able to read all your text messages because terrorism, and then because terrorism just became we need to be able to do whatever the fuck we want, there's a risk this is going the same way.
Yep.
Where it lands, we'll see.
Yep.
lawyers will probably ultimately determine. Now, I think, the fear in the community is like this is some sort of developer bait and switch, which is we'll release one model open source, we'll get a whole bunch of people excited so we can continuously quote that we've had 200,000 downloads, which, to be honest, actually feels like a small number. I feel like there's got to be more than that. But and then reel that back going forward, because people who don't know any better will see open source, 200,000 downloads, must be supported by all the developers, we'll use this tool, and then they sort of change their tactic. That's the fear. Where it's going to land, like, this is breaking stuff, so we're going to have to probably follow this up in a couple of weeks and see, well, probably a couple of months, to be honest, and see where it all landed. But and
I think the criticism, and rightly so, the criticism is coming from a point of you're saying openness, but now there is a world where you're not going to be open. Which one are you doing? And I personally as well, I'm like, you can be open, you can be closed. I don't mind. You pick. Pick one. And there's going to be some real tension in this space over the next couple of years as Stability tries to figure out now how to make money. They've already got a way to make money through Dream Studio. They've already made probably $1 to $2 million from our back of the envelope calcs. But how are they going to marry these worlds of open and research, free research available, and returning money to their new shareholders?
And look, it's tough because you can imagine, for those in the product world, the software product world, building product is tough, and the more users that you get, naturally the slower you have to move in terms of your product development. I think it would be very hard to write investor updates every month if you keep releasing the open source version and these investors see millions of new products popping up at that very early stage where you can be quick, and they see like all this rapid development happening, and then your product is growing less slowly. More slowly, sorry, I should say. Because it's at a bigger scale, there's more requirements, it's just sort of reached a more mature point in its product life cycle. I think that's a very tough thing to balance, to do those investor updates and say, we've released this free, we had another 500,000 downloads, please turn your eyes away from the 50 other startups that are now using Stable Diffusion to compete with Dream Studio. Dream Studio's grown 4% month on month. Like that's got to be a tough sell.
Now, can I set you up for your spicy take that you had last recording? Do you remember it, or were we?
I think we covered a little bit of it this time. So, I mean, my spicy take is that, let's say 3.5 years from now, we got 100 students, maybe halfway through their PhD, working on some potentially out-of-date topics, and we've got 4,000 plus GPUs that are at the end of their hardware lifecycle, and Stability is going to have to answer to that. And I think there is a chance there that the hotness will dissipate a lot faster than they can create new value. Especially as new people come out. Google, for example, who has an existing product suite, is in a prime position to actually take Imagen, which is their sort of text-to-image model, and release it as part of G Suite. Or Microsoft from DALL-E via OpenAI to put that into Office. And
they're competing with companies that can create their own use cases, which is the scary thing for them.
I mean, look, distribution is key.
And you heard it here first.
You heard it, I mean, and what I mean by that for people who are not sort of in the startup space or haven't been working in this world is that, there's a lot of great product out there, but a channel and a path to getting it to the people that will ultimately pay for it is often the hardest part. I mean, the example that gets thrown up a lot is the growth of Slack, now owned by Salesforce and Microsoft Teams. Slack grew pretty steadily, very impressive growth, great product. I think the world's kind of grown sick of messaging in general, but it's not Slack's fault. But Microsoft Teams came along. It was bundled with every Office 365 subscription. And it just exploded past Slack. And now Teams is the de facto. Because Microsoft owns the distribution channel. And I would say it's a little bit of an open question who owns the distribution channel for generative, for image generation creation like this. A lot would say Adobe. I would say maybe this is below Adobe's threshold in a lot of ways. You know, Adobe often markets itself to a more professional band of content creators. You know, this to me is more on the scale of Microsoft or Google.
Yeah, exactly. I see this being more useful for you and me and needing a picture in our PowerPoint slide than the graphic designer with 20 years experience end of the market.
Yeah. And, you know, here's a prediction that I've not made before, but it sort of just...
a spicy take.
Yeah. Not so spicy, but I would hazard a guess that within the next 12 to 18 months, Canva will release their own in-house image generation model.
Yep.
Knowing what I know about the teams that are there, hey, to those that we know that are there, I would be very surprised if they didn't.
Yep.
And given that they've released this Office suite now, I think there is a chance there that they are looking to take that route. So, mark my words, if there's not an AI... assuming Canva doesn't implode or anything, given market conditions, but assuming they all go to plan, I would be very surprised if they didn't have an image generation tool out in the next 18 months.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd believe that.
Yeah. If you're watching,
work on it so we're not wrong.
Go and build it. Go and build it. And also, you know, let me in on your next round, please.
Let's move on a little bit now as well into the other, and I think the better overlap here between the two is OpenAI's discussion with Microsoft. And so OpenAI is similar kind of scenario, rather than it was founded by a couple of billionaires, including Elon, back in 2015. Yeah. And they were essentially founded as this think tank meets philanthropy organization focused on AI research and AI safety. Now they've released some cool stuff. GPT was and the versions of them was probably their first biggest releases, especially with GPT-3. They've done DALL-E recently as well, DALL-E 2 recently. But they've also had to change how they operate a little bit in the last few years. So 2019, they started to seek outside investment, and they went from a not-for-profit to a capped profit. I don't know what a capped profit means. I couldn't find out what they're capping it at, but now they are a company too. And the for-profit arm is now valued at about $20 billion. Mm-hmm. It took $1 billion from Microsoft back in 2019. And so now they're in talks again with Microsoft to raise more money. And Microsoft is interested to guarantee usage on their Azure cloud computing platform. So we're now in this world where people are starting to nibble around. Google has DeepMind. They snapped them up back in 2014 for $500 million. Mm-hmm. Microsoft is definitely running after OpenAI and wondering whether they're looking like they're taking even more of the pie with this most recent announcement. Do you think Stability is in a position to be taken by maybe an Amazon or maybe someone else in the space? Meta obviously has their own already in-house as well. They're very focused in-house, but... Yeah,
look, potentially. It's interesting. I mean, I think Google's in a slightly different position. I guess Google and Microsoft, to me, are in a different position to AWS in that they have consumer product that they can roll a lot of this tech into, whether it's search or content or anything else. Versus, say, I mean, Amazon naturally does have a lot of consumer product, but AWS as a platform may be using this as a way, you know, similar to what we've discussed in the past, a way to demonstrate capability of their platform rather than a desire to actually own this product itself.
Yeah.
We'll see where that goes. I mean, OpenAI, as you say, has sort of become slightly less open for very similar reasons, citing safety and use of this product.
But a big reason as well was actually talent, from what I could understand, is that they weren't able to acquire the best minds in the space because they'd rather go to Facebook or Google where they got paid 3 times and got stock options.
Yeah, I think they could probably get like the pinnacle people, and they could probably get some PhD students. But I think that middle ground, you're absolutely right. Like a lot of the packages at these large tech companies when you're working in AI is stock. and if there is no foreseeable ROI in your stock because it's potentially a research org rather than a for-profit or potential exit, that can be a dissuasion. So you've either got to pay more, which is tough and getting tougher, or think of another option. I will say OpenAI has released, they do release a bunch of stuff in the sort of dev tool space. There's the OpenAI Gym, which is a reinforcement learning environment.
That was their first product,
Yeah. But these larger models, the trend really has seemed to be that, until we get a picture, and I really think it's until there's a first cab off the rank in terms of legal precedent, people are going to hold back because they don't want to be the one that gets sued into oblivion.
The patent attorney runs after you. Sorry, the Trade and Patent Office runs after you.
For deep fakes of, me,
and Andrew Street.
Hanging out in, I don't know, space or something. I don't know. So I'm doing some illegal shit. So we'll see. There's also obviously this big question that we keep bringing up but haven't seen the resolution on is the source material that trained all of this stuff. Is this fair use? Are people going to get pissed? Is copyright law going to have to change to adapt? And there is a part of keeping your sources secret, which is we don't have to reveal to you the fact that we scraped a whole bunch of pictures off of Disney and
YouTube.
Please don't sue us.
No, but it has the trend with OpenAI and with Stability is that it's going more closed than open. That's the way it's heading. And if you compare even the release of GPT-3 back in 2020, maybe 2021. Anyway, that was many more people were playing with that way earlier than they were even with DALL-E 2. There was the waitlist with DALL-E 2, and then suddenly, and the only reason they really opened it up was probably because Stability released Stable Diffusion was released by Runways and Stability.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot. I think the business models are still an open question in this space. GPT-3 seems to have done a per use sort of API type model, which seems to be working well for that product. I think it's harder in the image generation space because I think there's often more nuance and refinement needed to get the image that you want out of these systems. So the per prompt credit mentality is a bit harder to stomach. But we'll see where it ultimately ends up. I don't know. And it'll be, I think the price elasticity of people is going to be an interesting one as well in that right now we're used to paying a certain amount for high quality stock images, putting aside all the free ones that you can get. This is nominally taking that price down to cents rather than dollars. And people may get sick of paying that much. I mean, there's a dangerous thing when it's a race to the bottom almost when you're looking to just keep reducing prices. That if I release unstable diffusion, which is just stable diffusion but unhinged,
roll of the dice hit.
Yeah, exactly. And I do 1 million photos for a cent for some reason. And there's certainly research going on. There's a couple of papers published recently that make these models a lot faster, a lot more efficient, and then seemingly could be a lot cheaper. What does that mean for their product side of their business? So remains to be seen.
What was that paper you mentioned on Friday that was like...
Oh, yeah, so Imagik. So it's from the Google group. Look, it's a twist on Imagen to fine-tune models to take pictures. So the example in there is a picture of a dog standing in a field, and it says this image but with the dog sitting down. Now there was image to image in Stable Diffusion and the likes, but it'd put the dog sitting down, but it also put a couple extra trees in the background and it'll be a different dog. Or whatever. But this technique seems to maintain most of the image visual quality and similarity, but changes that one specific thing. So there's a person standing in front of a fence and it's with their hands by their side, holding a coffee cup, clapping or something like that. And it's an astounding piece of work in how high quality the output is. This is something that you might recall a few episodes ago, I said would be years away, and it's here. It's very clever, the way that it works. It's quite an approachable piece of work. And where I saw it was on Twitter, off the back of this Fast AI course that I'm doing, which is around Stable Diffusion. Somebody posted a tweet saying they'd re-implemented it for Stable Diffusion as opposed to Imagen, and they were going to post a notebook. I'm not sure if that's gone up yet, but when I find it, I'll either put it in the show notes or we'll send it around after. But it looked pretty cool. It takes a few minutes per image, so it's currently quite slow because it fine-tunes the model a couple of times and the embeddings a couple of times to get there. But
hey, it works. We know speed will follow quickly on top of this.
Definitely, and I think the techniques that are in there at a more fundamental level will likely be in the next versions of Stable Diffusion, where you have. You can ask for a picture, but then you can categorically select what type of dog you want. So it's like, no, I want a German Shepherd, not a Spoodle. And it'll keep the rest of the image pretty much the same, but swap those two elements out.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be just an amazing change to these. And I'll be very interested to see who gets that into consumer products first, because prompt engineering is a shit user interface, to be honest. It's so hard and so finicky. But if somebody can do this, where it's a lot more categorical, a lot more intuitive, then that, to me, is going to be the early winner in this space.
Have you seen all the, 90% of the posts on all the subreddits for all of these models are just, here's the exact prompt that I use and here's the output, so people can learn what prompts to use so they don't waste a credit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think somebody should put out a Instagram-like platform where all you can post is prompts and it generates images, and then you can reshare images, which gives you the original prompt, and you can modify it, and we can get nice little trees and histories of how all of these things fit together.
And then you monetize it by basically using it as training data for these other models.
Yeah. There's lots of options. But I just think it'd be such an interesting thing to see how communities come together to work on prompts and modify them and I guess evolve them over time.
Yeah, there's going to be I'm so excited for the fan art and the communities getting together to create a game that's based purely off prompts the artwork is based off purely off prompts, and all the storyboarding is created from one of these generative models.
Yeah, definitely. And we've got prompt to image at the moment, but there was that there was a paper that I saw recently. I can't remember if we talked about it last week, but it was pose, text to pose. So you could put text in and it would modify the rigging on a 3D model of a human for different movements in space. Yeah. And you can imagine silly little games where it's imagine Tekken, but you have to describe a motion against the other person and somehow battle it out, or prompt chess. Yeah. You've got to somehow outmaneuver the other person.
Yeah, soon we'll be playing StarCraft and Age of Empires via voice.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, look, putting a different hat on for a second, I think in terms of accessibility, for people that may have trouble interacting with computers at the moment, especially I think it'll be very hard to engage with a lot of these drawing tools or something if you just didn't have hands, for example.
Yeah.
It'd certainly be a lot more difficult, and providing these tools to help with that, but also just general use of technology and making that more accessible to people. What a wonderful outcome if that works.
But yeah, I think we'll kind of wrap up this little area. But I think what we'll end on is that there's another $100 million that's just been pumped into this generative world. There's 100 new PhD students and more GPUs about to be used for this area. Mm-hmm. The space is speeding up. We talked about it last week, how quickly Tesla was moving. We're seeing it here. Every week there's some new announcement on this generative world. I feel like we've been talking about this generative world non-stop for the last 12 weeks, and every week it's something new. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. So anything else to close with other than we're excited to see what happens before we move on to Jasper?
I think, I echo what you're saying. It's extremely exciting. If you are listening to this and you are a technical person in the AI field and you're looking at this thinking, I've missed the boat, my message to you is absolutely you have not. this stuff is not only moving faster than it ever has, but it's more approachable than it has ever been in the past.
Yep.
Get on this Fast AI course, the original one and this part 2 around Stable Diffusion. And I mean, Jeremy Howard, who runs the course and the rest of the team involved, I think the key thing that they've done, which is absolutely fantastic, is they've made it feel as if this stuff is extremely approachable. And it is. But they break down a lot of the more technical lingo and things that you'd see in the papers to something that's much more pragmatic that a programmer would be much more familiar with. And now, there's a lot of different people I've seen in the course, from sort of early people to weirdos like me that have been building AI for a long time. But the way that's being explained and delivered really does reinforce that, like, you've not missed the boat. We're only just getting started.
Yeah.
You're never going to have a full breadth of the field. Nobody does, and that's fine. But if there's something that interests you, just like dive in, because it's never been a better time to get started. Yeah,
we feel like we're in the colonial era and exploring the new world at the moment without the colonization part. But it's
yeah, that's it. I mean, it is the wild frontier. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's nice that I think there's a little bit more maturity in this space compared to some more recent trendy topics like, say, VR, crypto, things like that. Those are like, I mean, VR's been around for a while, and I guess both of them have. But I think the field of AI is probably more established, and there's been a lot of, I mean, generative stuff is the new hotness, but there's been a lot of work in, I guess, integrating AI into product and things that mean that, like, there's jobs out there today. It's sort of at the later stages of the hype cycle as a broad industry, and you're very unlikely to see, I mean, crypto was a tough one because, like, it was so tied to financials, and there was a crash. There was a financial crash, and all the tokens lost a whole bunch of value. You might see Stable Diffusion not be as valuable anymore, but that's not going to affect anyone's, personal well-being, except potentially the founders and the investors. But there's not going to be the same kind of crash. Like, you're still going to get a skill set that's robust and applicable and continues to evolve.
In Stability AI's in Stability's demo day, they flashed a graph up on the screen on the number of research papers, and I'll say research because it was on archive, so not peer reviewed, but the number of papers that were released on the space in ML, and it was log axis, and it still had a an exponential tilt to it.
Yeah, it's growing really fast, which is great. There is a lot of crap, don't get me wrong. Like, one of the skills you're going to need to pick up is, like, how to assess whether AI is good or whether it's not as good. And we hope we give you a little bit of that on this show and throughout our other videos. But, there's a lot going on. It's a great time. And look, one of the things you can definitely throw in the comments on YouTube or anywhere else, we don't have an email at the moment, but DMs are open on Twitter, is if you're getting into this field and you just want a bit of advice or understanding of how to get into it, or you feel a bit stuck, reach out to me. Happy to get back to you. Can't promise I'll get back to everyone just for normal time constraint type things, but I'll do my best to help out.
Good stuff. Now let's move on to Jasper. 125 big ones, 1.5 billion valuation. It's a spicy seed round. Came out of what I think, and I apologize to the founders if I got this wrong, but non-technical founders as well, it looked like.
It seems to be a wrap-up. I can't remember if it's GPT-3 or something similar, but, like, it's a packaging of an AI tool, which is another, like, pretty excellent thing if you're watching this, you're not an AI person, but you are a potential founder or in a different part of tech, is like, this is becoming accessible this way as well.
Exactly. You can, and flipping from the technical side of things to the non-technical side of things, this is what excites me about the space, is it's now accessible enough for people like myself who know my way around a little bit of Python code, but I'm by no means a developer. It's, you can start to really, it's gotten to the point where we're past the bleeding edge and it's starting to be implemented left, right and center. And I think it's going to be fundamentally important to all of our futures. And that's the reason why I'm sitting here talking to you about it today. So,
100%. I mean, this is text generation primarily for marketing, content, SEO, that sort of thing. But I think jumping back to that Ali Abdaal tweet thread that we saw before, it really does start to raise questions about, if a lot of that broad content that is, I mean, ultimately, a lot of SEO type content is recycled content.
Yep.
One of the examples on the Jasper page is, can we generate a blog post for a dentist in Texas comparing braces to Invisalign? And you can imagine there's probably like 1,000, 10,000 articles from every other dentist everywhere else. But they throw a few keywords in there and their brand name, and it helps with SEO. But you can imagine like that sort of content is going to rapidly lose value.
Yep.
You know, if Ali Abdaal can write a tweet thread of how to be productive, and it can generate content that like passed his quality bar of like, yeah, this is stuff that I would say. How many people need to keep saying that stuff? I think he knows he was right, but Cal Newport was right, man. Like, this has really just shifted the bar on what like shallow and deep work is, in that like regurgitating stuff in a non-refined new way for the purposes of things like algorithm hacking, SEO, or Twitter, or whatever else. That is shifted from deep specialized work now to like trivial shallow work, and I would not want to be in SEO I mean, you're probably still going to make a few bucks, but I think your job just got a lot easier.
Well, your original thinking now has a higher premium to it with this, and which is good. And so, if you're in the SEO space, you can't just be doing you're now going to have to switch to more original thinking. You can't be using the same formula from the past 10 years, because there is now a product out there that you can get for the low price of blah per month that will do your job for you on steroid, your previous job for you on steroid. It will write the blog posts. It will write the About You page. It will write the Facebook ads. It'll write the Instagram. Like, this world of digital marketing has now just had 100x more stuff pumped into it that seems possible to us as human beings. The only way that's going to be you're going to be able to cut through this stuff and now compete and like is to have some original thinking around this. Seth Godin, who is a marketing kind of whiz, has the view that basically marketing is worthless, and the only thing that you should be pushing for is a human-to-human recommendation. And he calls it remarkable. Make something remarkable, so people will remark about it to other people. And I think this just pushes that point even further, that now that there's going to be so many ads, blog posts on Invisalign that are all created by Jasper and the competitors of Jasper that will pop up in the next couple of years, now that there's so much of this stuff being created, the only way that you're going to cut through this noise is that humans are talking about you in some way. And where does that come from? Some form of original thinking, or some form of original, wonderful experience from your product.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're absolutely right. Like, you're going to cut through the noise because Google's ranking algorithm is going to adapt. It's an arms race in that space. And, you know, telling 1,000 stories about how your grandma invented the tomato and that's why they should make your tomato sauce and not another one is not going to cut it anymore. People are sick of that nonsense. And, in a similar way, like, this will become the noise which people need to rise above.
Yeah.
And that's probably a good thing. I mean, it also reminds me of that article, you know, that advertising doesn't work this way one, which is, you know, the premise of that article is that good advertising is not about implanting messages in the human brain. It's about a publicly agreed upon association between brand X or product X and something you want to signal about yourself as a user. And this is mainly in consumer world, but probably true in the corporate world to a certain extent. And if you have every brand trying to be everything to everyone, suddenly no brand is unique or interesting anymore. Because if every single dentist has braces versus Invisalign, it suddenly doesn't matter anymore. And people are going, you know, if you Google that and you get 500 results all from these dentists, I think eventually what's going to bubble to the top is the examine.com equivalent of dental care, which is, you know, superteeth.com or whatever it ends up being, where it's, you know, a small group of people who are committed to like cut through the nonsense and get real quality, objective A versus B type content out there, and that will win. Hopefully. I'm hopeful that it'll win. I mean, examine.com unfortunately has a hard time ranking against this stuff at the moment.
And this kind of we're delving away from the world of AI, but it's our podcast, so we can do what we want. There was this opinion on a podcast that we listened to that was in 30 years, and it's an extreme opinion for this to prove the point. In 30 years, all the consumer brands that we know will be gone. And the argument there, I don't believe with that. Apple's probably still going to be here. But the idea is that if you are a consumer good manufacturer, you are now competing with an inundation of advertising from every different place. And the only way that your message is going to cut through as a manufacturer of consumer goods is if you have a dedicated audience that will listen to you for essentially free. Because you can't out-budget people anymore in the marketing department. And then a great example with that is with Mr. Beast and his burger line.
Yeah.
No one can compete with Mr. Beast in the burger space anymore because he has so many people that are willing to listen to whatever he has to say, and you can't out-budget Mr. Beast in that regard.
Yeah, I'm on the fence with that argument in that, like, I agree right now, Beast Burger and Mr. Beast is probably doing really, really well. But if I had to make a bet about whether Beast Burger or McDonald's would be here in 20 years, I'd bet on McDonald's. Because I think that sentiment around people and individual brands, Beats by Dre, or, Kim Kardashian's latest makeup or perfume, or I don't know what Kim Kardashian sells, but I'm sure there's something. Or,
she now runs a private equity fund.
Well, yeah. I'm talking more along the consumer brands of things. I think that stuff has a very, effective sort of zeitgeist in that, Mr. Beast is now extremely popular right now with his current audience, and Kim Kardashian with hers and many others with theirs. But I think over the long term, and it'll get you a good launch, but over the long term, the brand needs to almost take on a name for itself. I mean...
So I think this person said a very, very, in 30 years it'll all be gone. What I actually think is the correct way to say this is that brands are suffering a attack on a front that they have never experienced before, and a influx in competition that they have not expected before. So another good example in this is the amount of beers that are own labeled beers that are popping up from podcasts around Australia. I can name 3 just from the podcasts that I listen to, and the obvious way to counterattack this is to help them launch it and be part of it. That is the obvious way to do it. Yeah. But what I think is that they're under attack from an area that they haven't traditionally been under attack from, and also in a way that's hard to compete with, because initially these people have the cost of acquisition costs as essentially zero compared to the traditional companies, because they can access their audience for free, and the audience is likely to listen to them. Mm-hmm. And so the less extreme way to say this point of view is that these places are under attack from an area, and that they'll have to adjust. And there'll be some that get done by it. There'll be some that go out of business because of it.
Definitely. And I think that aligns well with the advertising doesn't work this way idea. In that, people buy the beer from this podcast because they want to be associated with it. I mean, you brought some over, and the first thing you told me was about the podcast.
Yeah.
So I think, in my mind, brands will launch through people, but whether they stand the test of time will depend on their own, ability to stand up as almost like this faceless entity of its own. Red Bull has a personality now.
Yeah, it's the extreme sport drink.
Yeah, exactly. And it's separated from, I don't think anyone was ever the Red Bull person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is extremely real. And I don't know if it's new. I was watching a video the other day around this idea called the Sideways effect. Have you seen the movie Sideways? It's about these people that go on a wine tour, and it's big. It's just a little drama-y sort of thing. Bunch of people going on this tour discussing their lives, their tribulations, all this sort of stuff. But
sounds boring.
Apparently, it's a very good movie. I haven't seen it, but there's a scene in there where the guy's going on this tour, and he just goes. They're gonna go to some Merlot place, and he just says, "I don't want to drink any fucking Merlot." And apparently, due to the popularity of that movie and the sentiment they created in the market, the sales of Merlot dropped for the next 10 years in the US. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And then he was like harking on about how great
Pinots
were, I think. And yeah, and it honestly, like, the year that movie came out, you can see a divergence because Merlot was the most popular and growing type of wine in the US.
Yeah.
But that movie managed to shift the sentiment, and that was a fictional person. So I think you're absolutely right. Like, humanizing brands and content and everything else is going to be a huge part of this. And bringing this back to AI is that, like, you know, any of these products are going to be assistive tools, I think, for a long time, but there's still going to be a human element. I think we're very far away from, like, a TikTok where it's just AI-generated content, AI-generated videos.
Yeah.
I'm sure if they could pull it off, they would do it. But I think the hotness of that, the hype, would fade out really quickly because people want to connect with other people. It's, like, deeply ingrained in us.
Yeah. I think this, what we're saying is that, like, we're now able to ratchet up the quantity on advertising in a way that we've never been able to do before for very, very basic stuff. And we're just going to tune it out as humans. And what's going to cut through is going to be original thinking of some variety by a human. And it's just going to push virality even more and more important into this sphere where when there's a great ad that comes out, it's going to be shared, or a great video, or a great something. Like the power law just probably got a little bit more even squished to the left.
100%. I think the societal hedonic treadmill is very real. You know, we used to lose our minds if people had pineapples at their parties, and you could rent a pineapple because it was a symbol of wealth. But
wait, what?
Yeah, seriously.
What?
They were so hard to get in the US that...
When are we talking, like 2000 or 1900?
No, like closer to 1900 than 2000. People would rent pineapples to just, like, put in their fruit bowl at their house. Yeah. And people would be like, oh, wow, that's amazing.
Like in the Louvre, there is aluminium plates because the French royal family ate off them because aluminium was so expensive.
Yeah. And now, like...
You've got 10 meters in the drawer upstairs.
Yeah. Like, could you imagine if you went to somebody's house party and you're like, oh, my God, do you have a pineapple? Like, they would...
You had a pineapple upstairs, I'm pretty sure. Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we move on. Yeah. And I think that's going to happen here. Like, people are quick to adapt. You know, cars were once very rare and a symbol of craziness, and only some people had them, and then very quickly everyone had a car. Well, you know,
what's the pineapple in someone's house today?
I don't know. I mean, I think the older pineapple would be like things like those little voice assistant things. Like, there was a time when that was amazing, and now, like, I've got 6 of them in a drawer being unused.
I remember when I walked into someone's house and they had a USB slot in the PowerPoint. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. All sorts of stuff like that. You know, smart lighting and all this other sort of stuff. Like, it's cool, and then it's normal. It so quickly becomes normal, and becomes normal in a way that, like, you can't use that as a marketing differentiation anymore. And I think people are pretty good. You know, you watch people scroll through Twitter or scroll through Instagram or anything else. Like, we're pretty good at developing filters of, like, what's interesting to me and scrolling past the rest of it. And I think if everything becomes homogenized with AI-generated content, especially, I mean, harken back to a couple of episodes ago, it's very hard to personalize it to an individual in an effective way. It's going to become noise. Yeah. And people are just going to
And it's just going to push us more and more towards people that we trust and voices that we trust. So, like, you know, the Substack newsletter world's going to get more popular because you're like, oh, God, Twitter is just GPT-3, like, regurgitation. Yeah. I'm going to go read my newsletter instead. Like, or there's going to be, like, products that pop up which are like, we actually scan every tweet for originality. Yeah. And we don't let it on unless it's, like, passes the originality score.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that will become a big part of it, and I think we may even see, like, on the Substack theme of things, we may even see a lot more of a shift towards opt-in marketing, which is like, Rode, great brand, love to hear what they have to say. I'll opt into, you know, getting their newsletter or whatever else, but I don't want to be bombarded with, hey, I looked up a Rode microphone. Now literally every audio equipment company in the world is sending me GPT-3 plus Stable Diffusion generated ads of, like, buy my product.
Yeah. We didn't actually talk about the product demo, but it was pretty funny of this Jasper AI.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we went on and we watched the demo, and basically the premise was I'm going to create an email for a gym, and the prompts were no contract, the location of the gym, $9.99 a month, and we want it to be said in a Hulk Hogan-like voice.
Yeah, I think there was also like talk about the new summer.
Yeah, summer sale.
Summer sale or something.
And it releases this paragraph that's like, if you asked me to write a cheesy script for Hulk Hogan to do a TV ad, I would probably write this. Very cheesy. It's like, oh, hi, I didn't see you there. As I'm working my guns. Like,
or like, you know what makes me angry? High gym prices. Like, real lame cliche.
It's crazy how low these prices are. Anyway, and then suddenly the AI threw in a free trial as well.
Nowhere was it mentioned there was a free trial, but obviously it's seen a lot of Facebook ads or whatever, and it's like, sign up today for a free trial. Like, if I put my product out there to be advertised and people were offering free trials.
Shit, I put the free trial in the Lamborghini. Damn it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's going to be an industry alive and well for fact-checking a lot of these outputs,
But I'm going to tee you up with something you mentioned last week that I think is worth mentioning as well, and that is with all of this content being created, we're now our data source of let's just scrape the internet for text to see what humans are, the humans write and how humans are right. That's now going to be quickly polluted, right? Yeah,
absolutely. So the thought experiment that I had was, let's assume that this model will give them a high quality bar. 1 in 1,000 sentences contains a factual error. So of the 1,000 advertising sentences, it says 1 in 1,000 times it'll accidentally offer a free trial. Pretty annoying error, but whatever. This stuff is going to get out on the web. And GPT-4 or 5 or 6 or 7...
I don't even proofread my own work, let alone the GPT-3 marketing thing. I'm just going to press ship on that ad.
If you're making 400 blog posts about every dental procedure in the world, you're probably not going to proofread them all. But now the web has a whole bunch of content with a 0.01 error rate on it. GPT-4 gets trained on that data, assuming correctness to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And that is then going to generate more content, which may have a slightly larger error rate because it's got its new 1 in 1,000 it fucked up, but also the 1 in 1,000 it regurgitated something that was a correct regurgitation, but it was wrong.
GPT-4 is a little bit better, so it's only got a 1 in 1,100 error, but it just propagated the 1 in 1,000 error as well as its own error.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm sure this is part of the training set right now. I'm sure not everything on the internet is factually correct. But
wait, what?
Yeah, who would have thought? But I think whether it's images or text or anything else, future training sets are going to contain outputs of previous models. And, if this was a more mission-critical operation like medical imaging, for example, and part of your data set was synthetically generated AI X-rays that were not actually physically possible, but got caught up in the mix, that is going to start to do bad things. I think.
I just always wonder as well, how long until something gets baked into the zeitgeist, as you said, as fact when it's not. When for example, everyone thinks spinach is high in iron, but that came from some error in the 1920s where someone put the decimal place in wrong and it had a factor of 10 less iron in it or something.
Yeah.
And it's just not true that spinach has a high iron content, I think. I can't remember now. I'm freaking out about it. But anyway, someone will fact check me. But what happens if they get the Invisalign versus braces one wrong and everyone, there's an error in it where it's oh, no, braces will give you mouth cancer. And we're just sitting there in 100 years' time being remember how we used to give braces to people and it gave them mouth cancer?
Yeah, no, 100%, man. They used to say people ate spiders in their sleep, which was a story that was literally made up to show that misinformation propagated very quickly through networks.
But it reminds me of the Twin Towers experiment when they asked people to write exactly where they were when in New York City, in Manhattan, when the Twin Towers were, when the planes flew into the Twin Towers, write down what they were doing at that time. And then they asked them to update that every 6 months or 12 months, can't remember the frequency, over the next 5 to 10 years. And it completely changed. The stories completely changed. Malcolm Gladwell did a podcast episode on it, we'll put it in the show notes, and his story changed from, he thought he was getting breakfast with a friend, but he actually went back and it was like, and it was like, no, he was in a coffee shop or something. And how like during this time we can convince ourselves what is true or what is not.
Yeah, definitely.
And I have that as well. Like when I broke my leg, and like my friend who was there with me, like we recollected one part of it very differently.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, we do this. We reinforce reimagined versions of stories, and then that gets baked in. There's a lot of like work around this in terms of how good witness recounts of events are and things like that. Do you remember what you were doing when the planes hit the Twin Towers?
I was asleep because of the time zone change.
I was awake. Well, I don't actually know what I was doing when it happened.
I just remember Cheese TV not being on.
I was watching Art Attack. You remember that show?
Oh, Art Attack. Yeah.
I was watching that, and it got cut out for the news.
Yeah.
And like, I was kind of naive to what was going on because I was getting ready for school, and I was like, "This is super annoying."
Yeah.
Oh, please put the Art Attack back on, and it turned out that a more serious attack was taking place.
I knew it was serious because Dad didn't go to work.
Oh wow.
Yeah. He like sat down and read the news, watched the news or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Well, that means we've been about an hour because Midas has jumped on me.
Yeah.
Like this is actually like a pretty good clock. So.
Yes. Yeah, he's surprisingly good at telling the time.
Yeah, this is our anything to wrap up on this Jasper AI, Stability AI, OpenAI world? Lots of money going into this space.
Lots of money going into this space. Exciting time. You know, I think we do have a natural inclination to try and pick out criticisms and little bits and pieces in this. I do want to say that like we do that as the skeptical scientists,
supportive parents.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than hating on this stuff. I mean, the fact that these two companies raise these rounds is amazing. Yeah. I'm sure they will go and do great and valuable things, and I'm sure the people there are fantastic people. But our job here is to separate the hype from the reality, and that's what we're doing. So keep up the good work, teams, and keen to see where it goes.
Yeah, and thank you very much for listening, tuning in. Any comments, leave them. Any comments, questions, leave them in the YouTube comments or hit us up on Twitter. All the contact details are in the show notes. If you haven't yet subscribed, press that subscribe or follow button on whichever platform you're on. And yeah, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week, hopefully without a second recording.
Yes, we got a backup now. I'll get a slightly better backup device maybe, and thanks for tuning in.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.